8 is 6 plus 2, so 0 plus 2, and so it is equivalent to 2. And so we have 8 equivalent to 2. So when we take 2 multiplication modulo 6 into 4, then we get 2. Okay, here we could see one strange thing here. This 2 is a non-zero number, this 3 is a non-zero number, and yet their multiplication is 0. As we discussed, it cannot happen with a normal number system and normal addition or multiplication operation, but here non-zero numbers multiplication becomes 0, so these two numbers are called zero divisors. There is one more example, say 4 multiplication modulo 6, 3. Now 4 multiplied by 12, 4 multiplied by 3 is actually 12, and 12 is actually 6 plus 6, but since the operation is multiplication modulo 6, our 6 is equivalent to 0, this 6 is equivalent to 0, so this is 0 plus 0, and so the output is 0. Again, 4 is a non-zero element, 3 is a non-zero element, but their multiplication becomes 0. So again, 4 and 3 are zero divisors. So this is what we mean by zero divisors. So we come to our presentation, zero divisors. So whenever there are two non-zero elements and yet their multiplication is 0, we say that it's a very special event, and these two numbers are called zero divisors of a ring. Okay, there is one small result which says that if zero divisors are there, then we may have some problems, but if there are no zero divisors, in normal number system and normal addition and multiplication, we don't have zero divisors, so we had cancellation laws. Here also cancellation laws are available in a ring provided there are no zero divisors in a ring. If there are zero divisors in a ring, there might be problem with the cancellation laws. So now a good news, if no zero divisors, normal kind of a structure, then we'll have restricted cancellation laws. We use the word restricted because, as you know, in a multiplication we cannot cancel 0. So we have cancellation law and we can cancel a number a into b equal to a into c should give b equal to c if the number which is cancelled, number a, is not 0. And so that's why we use a word restricted cancellation laws. So in cancellation laws, it's very simple. There are no conditions. If a into b equal to a into c, we must have b equal to c. But in restricted cancellation law, what we mean is whenever AB equal to AC, then A will be cancelled and we have B equal to C, provided A is not 0. And that's why we use the word restricted cancellation law. We go to the next slide. This is a definition, integral domain. Suppose R is a non-empty set and which is having two operations, again plus and dot like a ring. Then R is an integral domain if there are 11 properties satisfied. Okay, let us see what are these 11 properties. First is R being a commutative group under plus. Group has 4 properties, commutative group has 5 properties. So first condition represents 5 properties. Next, even for dot, closure, associativity, commutativity is there and distributive is there. Okay, so there is only one property missing than a field, and it is the inverse property. This inverse property for dot is not available. Otherwise all properties are available. Even commutativity for dot is available. And finally, the ring, R, set R has no zero divisors. Okay, so our restricted cancellation laws will be available. So in this case, we'll have that this special ring is called an integral domain. So integral domain is little more than the division ring. A division ring had 10 properties. Here we have 11 properties, but here we have the multiplicative inverse property missing, which is a big thing actually. But in all we have 11 properties, and we have a special property for integral domains which says that there are no zero divisors. So this is a comparison between integral domain and a field. We can see that the first point is the same. Integral domain and field both are commutative groups with respect to plus. Even for dot, they have closure, associative, and commutativity, and of course identity property. The only property which is different is the last one. In integral domain we have the 11th property that it must not have zero divisors, while in a field the 11th property says that it must have multiplicative inverses for all non-zero elements. So 10 properties same in integral domain and a field, only the 11th property is different. Integral domain takes care of zero divisors, while field takes care of the multiplicative inverses for non-zero elements. Let us see which has a stronger impact. First, we have some examples. A set of integers z is the simplest example of a commutative ring with unity under the usual addition and usual multiplication. Okay, so it's a good news. It's a usual addition. So we can say 5 plus 2 is 7 and 5 into 2 is 10. So set of integers is perhaps the simplest ring, and it's not only a ring, it's actually a commutative ring because commutativity holds for usual addition, and of course we have unity element as well. So identity element for usual multiplication, that is 1, that is also available in Z. So it's a commutative ring with unity. Another set MNR, which is a set of all n by n matrices, and it's again a ring with unity, but it's a non-commutative ring. We know that in matrices normally multiplication of two matrices, say A and B, if you take A into B, it is different than B into A normally. Many times A into B is available and B into A is not at all available. Okay, so it's a non-commutative ring. Whenever we say non-commutative, basically we talk about dot, because for plus anyway we have to have commutativity for plus. There's one more example. R is equal to, suppose we have numbers of the form a plus b root 2, where a and b, they must be rational numbers, then again it's a ring. Okay, again we have the set Z. I mean, it's a special set actually, Z. It's not perfectly the set of integers. If it's a set of the type a plus bi, where a and b are integers, okay, then again it's a commutative ring with unity. This special ring is known as a Gaussian ring, and its elements are called Gaussian integers. Simple examples are 2 plus 3i. So we don't cover all the complex numbers actually. We cover only those complex numbers where a and b are integers. And now we come to some simple properties of a ring. These properties are so simple that when we look at for the first time, we feel that there is what is special about it. It's anyway true for our natural concept. For example, the first properties say that whenever we have some element a, then a multiplied by 0 will be 0. Very simple looking thing, that anything multiplied with 0 is 0. But here again, when we say multiplication, what we mean is the second operation of a ring, and when we say 0, it is in fact the identity element for the first operation. Similarly, second property, a very trivial looking property for number system, usual number system, when a is multiplied with minus b. Now let us say what is minus b. Minus b is the additive inverse of b. So one more notation closer to our usual symbols. Minus b is the additive inverse. Whenever we say additive, means the first operation. So a into minus b is same as minus a into b, and is same as minus of ab. Third is again so trivial looking thing, minus a multiplied by minus b, that is equal to ab. Next, if R has a unity element 1, then minus 1 into a will be same as minus a. And finally, fifth property is so obvious looking, but we need to remember that we are referring to a ring theory now. So minus 1 into minus 1 is 1. So additive inverse of multiplicative identity and multiplied with the same will give you the multiplicative identity. Some more basic results, again very trivial looking results. For any elements a and b in a ring R and any integers m and n, if we have n times a plus b, then it is n times a plus n times b. M plus n multiplied by a is ma plus na. N into ma is same as nm into A. So these are properties which are very simple looking properties, very obvious properties in usual number system, but here also they are available. Again, two more properties which are very trivial looking. A raised to m into a raised to n is a raised to m plus n. Again the question comes, what do we mean by a raised to m? What we mean by a raised to m is a dot a dot a dot a m number of times. So that is denoted by a raised to m. So a raised to m into a raised to n gives a raised to m plus n, and similarly a raised to m's n power, that is a raised to m dot a raised to m dot a raised to m n number of times will give you a to the power mn. Okay, now if a and b follows commutativity, that means ab is same as ba, then two more properties. A raised to n into b raised to m will be same as b raised to m into a raised to n, commutativity kind of a thing. And secondly, ab whole raised to n is equal to a raised to n into b raised to n. So this is again one more property. So these are all properties which are simple looking properties for our usual number system, but luckily they are available for ring theory also. And now we come to some serious results. First is the comparison between a field and an integral domain. We had a look at the definition of both, and we could see that both had 11 properties. Integral domain had 11 properties, field had 11 properties, 10 properties were the same, only 11th property was different in both. Integral domain had the property of non-existence of zero divisors, while field had the 11th property of multiplicative inverse existing for non-zero elements. And our result says that every field is an integral domain. So this simply says that field is a stronger property. If something is a field, it is definitely an integral domain. So this result is one of very important results in ring theory, that every field is an integral domain, and the converse is not true. So every integral domain is not necessarily a field. A standard example is the ring of integers z. We can see that z under usual addition and usual multiplication becomes an integral domain, but z is not a field simply because z does not permit the multiplicative inverses. For example, if we take number 3 in z, then 3's multiplicative inverse ideally will be 1 by 3, but 1 by 3 doesn't exist in z. So multiplicative inverse property that fails in z. So z is an integral domain, but unfortunately it doesn't turn out to be a field. So every field is an integral domain, we can say. So field goes to integral domain, but the converse is not true. Integral domain is not necessarily a field. But anyway, if we put a little more in the condition, then even the converse becomes true. If we add finiteness, if the set is finite, then there is no issue. Then every finite integral domain will turn out to be a field. So just an addition of finiteness, an integral domain becomes a field. So once again, a field is an integral domain, but an integral domain is not necessarily a field. But if we add finiteness here, then every finite integral domain will definitely become a field. So that is what we see in our next slide, that our finite integral domain will become a field. One more concept is there. That concept is the concept of a characteristic of a ring. There was a concept of the order of an element in a group. There is a parallel concept of a characteristic of a ring in ring theory. The definition of a characteristic of a ring says that if there is a positive integer n such that it is the smallest positive integer such that n into a equals 0 for each element a of R, then n is said to be the characteristic of a ring R. We'll see the example. And of course, before we go to the example, if such a number does not exist, then we say that the characteristic of a ring is either 0 or we may say it is infinity. And this is the example. Say Z6, again over that ring with addition modulo 6 and multiplication modulo 6. So Z6 has 6 elements, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And now we start with the first element. Our first element is 1. So we start 1 multiplied by 1, 2 multiplied by 1, 3 multiplied by 1, 4 multiplied by 1. We go on getting it in the first column. And we can see that when we get 6 multiplied by 1, we get 6. But our 6 is equivalent to 0. Okay, so we get 0 when we multiply 6 with 1. Now we start with the same process with 2. We can see that if we take 1 multiplied by 2, 2 multiplied by 2, 3 multiplied by 2, then initially we don't get 0, but when 3 multiplies with 2, then we get 6, and that means 0. So earlier for 1 we had number 6, but for 2 we have number 3. Okay. Similarly, if we go for 3, then we have 1 into 3, 3, and 2 into 3 as 6 and as 0. So if we see here, for element 1, we had 6 into 1 to be 0. Okay, so for the first time we get 0 at 6. For element 2, we get 3 into 2 equal to 0. But if 3 into 2 is 0, then if we continue 4 into 2, 5 into 2, then again 6 into 2 will be 12. 12 is 6 plus 6. Since 6 is equivalent to 0, this is again 0. Okay. Continuing this, even if we take 9 into 2, then we'll have 0. Here also, if 6 into 1 was 0, then multiples of 6. So 12 into 1 will be 0. 18 into 1 will be 0, and so on. So this continues. Here this continues. Suppose we take element 3. Then we know that 1 into 3 is not 0, but 2 into 3 is 0. So 2 does the job. If 2 does the job, to multiples of 2, so 4 into 3, that will be 12, again 0. Okay, so again 6 into 3, again 0. 8 into 3, again 0, and this continues. So we can see that there is one number which is common everywhere. It is 6. 6 into 1 is 0. 6 comes here as well. 6 into 2 is 0. 6 comes here as well. 6 into 3 is 0. So 6 is a number which is coming everywhere. Of course, if 6 is coming everywhere, then we can see that even 12 will be coming everywhere, because here also after 6 and 9 the next number will be 12.